Travis breaks into tears crying. Tay's dad says this about possible wedding. It was a crisp autumn evening, and Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were enjoying a quiet dinner at Taylor's Nashville home. The house was adorned with fairy lights, casting a warm glow as soft country music played in the background. For once, the couple didn't have to worry about paparazzi or public attention. It was just the two of them, but Travis was unusually quiet. Taylor noticed immediately. She looked across the table at him, her blue eyes narrowing in concern. "Travis, what's going on? You've been distant all night." Travis, normally full of energy, seemed to shrink into his chair. He took a deep breath, his large hands trembling slightly as he pushed his food around the plate. "I don't know, Tay. I'm just thinking about everything. This whole relationship, all the pressure, the spotlight." Taylor reached across the table, placing her hand on his. "I know it's not easy," she said softly. "But we're in this together." Travis swallowed hard, blinking rapidly as if to fight back tears. "No, it's not just that. It's you. You're this amazing, successful, talented woman, and sometimes I feel like I don't deserve all this. You've had this incredible life before I even came into it, and I'm afraid of messing it up. Afraid of not being good enough for you." Taylor's heart broke seeing him so vulnerable. She squeezed his hand tighter, leaning forward. "Travis, you are more than enough. Don't you dare think for one second that you're not. We're a team. I love you for who you are, not because of anything you've accomplished. You make me feel like I can be myself, and I want to be by your side no matter what." But the words didn't seem to reach him. Travis stood up abruptly, stepping toward the window with his back turned to her. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," he murmured, almost to himself. "What if we never get to a point where we can just be happy, without all the pressure?" Taylor stood up as well, walking slowly toward him. She wrapped her arms around him from behind, her cheek resting on his back. "We'll find our way, I promise." The moment was broken by the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Taylor's father, Scott Swift, stepped out of the car, carrying a bottle of wine. He had come for an impromptu visit, knowing Taylor loved his surprise check-ins. As he walked in, he immediately noticed the tension in the room. Travis, still with his back to everyone, seemed lost in thought. Scott raised an eyebrow, looking at Taylor. "Everything okay?" Taylor smiled softly, though it was clear she was worried about Travis. "We're fine, Dad, just one of those moments." Scott's eyes softened, and he walked toward Travis, giving him a fatherly pat on the back. "Son, can I talk to you for a second?" Travis turned, his eyes red, a mix of frustration and emotion on his face. "I don't know if I can do this. I'm scared, and I don't want to hurt her." Scott placed a hand on his shoulder, his tone serious but kind. "Listen, I've watched my daughter go through a lot in her life. And I've watched her grow, change, and become the incredible person she is today. She's been with a lot of people, but you're different, Travis. She's happier with you than I've ever seen her. So if you're thinking about walking away because of your fears, don't. Not for my sake, not for hers, but because you're scared of what's good." Travis was silent for a moment, the weight of Scott's words sinking in. Scott continued, "As for the wedding, if you two are ready for that step, then I'm all for it. Just make sure that you're doing it because it feels right for both of you, not because of any expectations. There's no rush, but when it happens, I'll be the happiest father-in-law in the world." Travis's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time that night, he finally broke down. He turned to face Scott, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't want to mess this up. I love her so much." Scott embraced him in a fatherly hug, a firm but gentle gesture. "You're not going to mess it up, son. Just love her with everything you've got, and the rest will follow." Travis nodded, wiping his eyes as he pulled away. Taylor stood behind him, her heart swelling with gratitude for the man who had just calmed her fears. She walked over and wrapped her arms around both men. "Thank you, Dad, I'm lucky to have you both." As they stood there in the warm glow of the kitchen, with the weight of the moment finally lifting, Travis knew that whatever came next, he was ready to face it with Taylor by his side. He'd learned something valuable that night. Love wasn't about perfection. It was about growth, trust, and holding on to the people who made you feel whole. Travis breaks into tears crying. Tay's dad says this about possible wedding. It was a quiet evening at a cozy, rustic cabin nestled in the mountains, where Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce had come to escape the prying eyes of the world. The glow of a crackling fire danced across the walls as they sat together, enjoying each other's company in a rare moment of peace. Travis, usually the confident, strong athlete, sat staring into the flames, his thoughts clouded. He couldn't shake the thought of the future, of Taylor's future, their future. What if he wasn't enough for her? What if their whirlwind romance couldn't withstand the pressure of fame, family, and expectations? These doubts gnawed at him. Taylor noticed the change in his demeanor. She shifted closer, her hand gently resting on his. "Travis," she said softly, her voice like a warm melody. "What's going on in that head of yours?" Travis let out a sigh, running his hand through his hair. "I just keep thinking, what if I mess this up? You deserve someone who can handle everything that comes with being with you, and I." Before he could finish, the first tear slid down his cheek. Then another. The giant football star, who had faced down countless opponents in his career, was overcome with emotion. His breath quickened, and he wiped his face with the back of his hand. Taylor's heart ached. She cupped his face gently, her touch tender. "Travis, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be anyone but yourself. And I love you for who you are." But Travis shook his head, his voice cracking. "What if who I am isn't enough? What if I can't give you the life you deserve? This whole thing, us. I never thought I'd be in this deep." Taylor squeezed his hand, pulling him into a hug. "You're enough, Travis. You're more than enough. And we're in this together. Don't you ever doubt that." As they held each other in the quiet warmth of the cabin, a knock came at the door, breaking the moment. Startled, Taylor pulled away slightly. It was her dad, Scott Swift, standing in the doorway with a knowing look in his eyes. "Sorry to interrupt," he said with a smile, "but we need to talk." Travis stood up, wiping his eyes, embarrassed by the vulnerability he'd just shown. But Scott waved him off with a reassuring gesture. "No need to apologize, son," Scott said kindly. "I've seen my daughter go through many relationships, but I can tell you're different. I can see how much you care for her." Taylor's father paused, his gaze lingering on Travis for a moment before he continued. "Look, I won't sugarcoat things. Being with Tay is no easy ride. It comes with challenges, but it also comes with love and support. I see how much you want to be there for her, and that counts for more than anything." Travis swallowed hard, grateful for Scott's words but still uncertain. I don't want to let her down." Scott smiled, a warm, fatherly smile that seemed to ease the tension in the room. "If you want to be part of this family, the most important thing is respect. Respect for her, for yourself, and for what you've got together. And as for marriage, well, that's something you'll both figure out when the time is right." Travis nodded, a sense of relief washing over him. "I promise I'll do everything I can to make her happy." Scott chuckled softly. "Well, you're already doing better than most. But remember this. Marriage isn't about being perfect. It's about being there for each other through thick and thin. If you two can do that, the rest will follow." As the evening wore on, the weight of doubt that had burdened Travis began to lift. He felt stronger, knowing that Taylor's dad believed in him, and in their future. Sitting back down, Travis took Taylor's hand in his, a tear still lingering in his eye but now accompanied by a smile. He leaned in, his voice steady. "I'll never give up on us, Tay. Never." And with that, the fire in the cabin continued to burn brightly, just as their love did, unpredictable, yet unbreakable. Travis breaks into tears crying. Tay's dad says this about possible wedding. It was a crisp winter evening in Nashville, the kind of night where the air felt like it was filled with hope and anticipation. Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce were walking hand in hand through the sprawling gardens of her family's estate. The soft glow of lanterns dotted the path, and the scent of pine and cedar filled the air. It was a peaceful, almost dreamlike setting, but Travis's mind was anything but at ease. "Travis, you've been so quiet tonight. What's going on?" Taylor asked, glancing up at him with concern. Her voice was soft, but it was clear she noticed the weight he was carrying. Travis paused, his heart racing. He had never been one to wear his emotions on his sleeve, especially not in front of the people he loved. But tonight, something inside him broke. The idea of possibly getting married to Taylor had been swirling around in his head, and the thought of living up to the legacy of her family, especially her father, felt overwhelming. Tay, I don't know if I'm enough for you," Travis admitted, his voice cracking slightly. "Your family, your friends, they all adore you. And then there's me, a guy from a football field, trying to step into a world I don't even fully understand. I love you so much, but I'm scared of failing you." Taylor stopped walking, her eyes searching his face as if she could read every thought running through his head. She gently cupped his face with her hands, brushing away a stray tear that had formed in the corner of his eye. "Travis," she whispered, "you're everything I've ever wanted. You're the person who sees me, truly sees me for who I am. And that's more than enough. But Travis couldn't shake the doubt. His shoulders slumped, and he wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. The vulnerability of the moment made him feel exposed in a way he hadn't felt before. "I don't want to disappoint you," he said, barely above a whisper. Before Taylor could respond, they heard footsteps behind them. It was Taylor's dad, Scott Swift, approaching with a quiet smile. He'd been watching from a distance, sensing that this was a conversation that needed to happen, and he knew the weight of it was heavy for both of them. Scott walked up, his presence warm and steady. "Travis, I know you're feeling overwhelmed," he began, his voice full of wisdom and understanding. "But you don't need to prove anything to me, son. You've already proven who you are by loving my daughter the way you do." Travis turned, his eyes still red, and for the first time that night, he saw the sincerity in Scott's eyes. I just don't know if I'm worthy of her," Travis confessed. Scott smiled gently, placing a hand on Travis's shoulder. "You're not meant to be worthy in some grand way. You're meant to be real. And what I see in you is someone who is exactly what Taylor needs. Someone who loves her fiercely, supports her dreams, and isn't afraid to face his own vulnerabilities. That's more than enough for me." The warmth of Scott's words wrapped around Travis like a comforting blanket. The tension in his chest began to ease. He looked at Taylor, who was now standing beside him with a small, encouraging smile. "You're my world, Tay," he said, his voice stronger now, filled with emotion. "And if you want a wedding, then I'll move mountains to make sure it's the happiest day of our lives." Taylor's smile widened, her heart swelling with love for him. "I don't need a fairy tale wedding, Travis. I just need you, and if we're in this together, that's all I've ever wanted." Scott nodded approvingly, his eyes twinkling with a father's pride. "That's the spirit. A marriage isn't about grand gestures, it's about commitment. And from what I've seen tonight, you two have that in spades." Travis felt a rush of relief wash over him. His tears had turned from sadness to joy, and in that moment, surrounded by love and acceptance, he realized that he was ready. Ready for the future with Taylor, ready for whatever came next. "I think we can make this work," Travis said, his voice now steady, filled with a sense of certainty he hadn't felt before. Taylor leaned in and kissed him gently on the cheek. "I know we can." And as the snow began to fall gently around them, the future seemed clearer than ever. There would be challenges ahead, but with love, support, and the blessing of those who mattered most, Travis and Taylor knew they were ready to face whatever came their way, together.